The fork froze halfway to my mouth. To Kevin, my stepfather Victor announced, raising his wine glass with that smirk I'd learned to hate. May he finally figure out what real work looks like before he hits 50. Laughter rippled around the Thanksgiving table. My wife Amanda stared at her plate. My mother touched Victor's arm gently, smiling. "Victor, please," she whispered, but there was no force behind it. My brother Tyler looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Victor continued, his voice booming across the dining room. "I mean, consulting. What even is that? Making PowerPoints and charging people for common sense." More laughter. My face burned. I was 42 years old, being humiliated like a child in front of my own family. I set down my fork carefully, pushed back my chair, and stood. I should go. Nobody protested. As I grabbed my coat from the hallway, I heard Victor's voice from the kitchen, loud and clear. Give him 2 years. He'll come crawling back, begging for his old job. My blood ran cold. What old job? I left the family business 3 months ago on good terms. Or so I thought. My name is Kevin Bradford. I'm 42 years old, originally from Portland, Oregon. And if this story resonates with you, please subscribe to this channel for more fascinating stories like this. The next morning, I called my brother Tyler. Was there a meeting yesterday? Before dinner? The silence on the other end told me everything. Tyler talked to me. He sighed heavily. Yeah, man, there was. Mom and Victor decided to restructure the operations side. They're removing you from all decision-making roles. My stomach dropped. Removing me? I resigned 3 months ago. I know, Tyler said quietly. But Victor's been telling people you were forced out, that you couldn't handle the pressure. I gripped the phone harder. And you said nothing? What was I supposed to say, Kevin? You weren't even there. Mom sided with him completely. She said you'd abandoned the family business for some pipe dream. The betrayal cut deeper than Victor's insults ever could. My own mother. Did Amanda know about this meeting? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Tyler hesitated just a moment too long. Yeah, Victor invited her specifically. He said she deserved to know the truth about the company's direction. I confronted Amanda that evening. She was folding laundry in our bedroom, moving with deliberate slowness, avoiding my eyes. You knew about the meeting. It wasn't a question. She stopped mid-fold, shoulders tensing. Victor thought I should be there. And you didn't think to tell me? Your husband? Amanda finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes made my breath catch. It wasn't guilt. It was pity. Maybe he's right, Kevin, she said quietly. Maybe this consulting thing is just you running away from responsibility. Running away? I left because Victor made every day miserable. You know that. She shook her head, resuming her folding. I know you weren't willing to fight for your position. You just gave up. The words hit like physical blows. I didn't give up. I chose my mental health over his toxic management. That's what quitters say, Amanda replied, her voice flat. I'm tired, Kevin. I'm tired of supporting someone who won't support himself. Victor built that company from nothing. What have you built? I stared at my wife of 15 years, searching for the woman I'd married. She was gone. In her place stood someone who'd already decided I was a failure. Monday morning, I tried logging into the company portal. Access denied. I called the office. This is Kevin Bradford. There's an issue with my account. The IT manager, Derek, sounded uncomfortable. Mr. Bradford, I was told to revoke your credentials. Direct order from Victor. I resigned months ago. Derek, why did I still have access until now? I don't know, sir. I just follow orders. I drove to the office anyway. My nameplate was gone from the door. My office had been converted into a storage room, boxes stacked where my desk once stood. Victor's assistant Stephanie saw me standing there. Kevin, you can't be here. Victor said, this was my office for 12 years, Stephanie. She looked genuinely sorry. I know. I'm sorry. But Victor's been telling clients you quit suddenly, left everyone in a difficult position. He said you were unreliable. The manipulation was breathtaking in its thoroughness. He wasn't just removing me from the company. He was erasing my entire contribution, rewriting history to make himself the hero and me the villain who abandoned ship. I submitted my formal resignation letter that afternoon. No drama, no accusations, just a clean, professional exit. Victor called me within an hour, voice dripping with false concern. "Kevin, you don't have to do this. We can work something out. I already resigned 3 months ago. Victor, this is just paperwork. But the clients, the projects you were managing, were transitioned properly when I left. You know that." He chuckled. That same condescending sound from Thanksgiving. "All right, if this is what you want. Don't come crying back when reality hits." "I won't," I said and hung up. Amanda found the resignation letter on my desk that evening. "So, you're really doing this? Just walking away?" "I already walked away. This is me closing the door." She shook her head. "You're making a huge mistake. Where are we supposed to go from here?" I looked at her carefully. "I have a consulting job lined up in Roseburg. It doesn't pay much at first, but it's honest work." "Roseburg? That's 2 hours away." "So we'll move?" I said simply. The horror on her face told me everything I needed to know about our future. The next 3 months were brutal. We moved to a small rental house in Roseburg. My consulting work paid less than half my previous salary. Amanda complained constantly about the downgrade. The old car I had to buy when we sold her sedan to cover moving costs, the smaller house, the lack of restaurants and entertainment. "This is humiliating," she said one evening, staring at our modest living room. "My friends ask where we are, what happened. What am I supposed to tell them?" "Tell them the truth. We're rebuilding." "There's nothing to rebuild, Kevin. You're 42 years old, starting over like some college graduate. This is pathetic." I'd enrolled in an advanced business certification program online, studying late into the night after my consulting work was done. Amanda mocked that too. "More school? That's your solution? You already have an MBA. Industries change. I need to stay current." She laughed bitterly. "Victor was right about you." Those words became her favorite weapon. Victor was right. Victor knew. Victor succeeded where you failed. The man was destroying my marriage from 2 hours away, without even trying. 4 months into my exile, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Kevin Bradford?" "Speaking. This is Andrew Torres. We worked together on the Cascade project 3 years ago." I remembered Andrew. Good guy, sharp businessman. "Andrew, of course. How are you?" "Concerned, actually. I just had a meeting with your old company. Victor's trying to win a contract I'm overseeing, but his proposal was garbage. Completely missed the key requirements we discussed." My interest sharpened. That doesn't sound like Victor. That's what worried me. "Kevin, between you and me, I think he's in over his head. The numbers don't add up. The timeline's unrealistic, and when I press him on details, he got defensive instead of addressing my concerns." After we hung up, I sat in my tiny home office, thinking. Victor had always been a big-picture guy, relying on people like me to handle the details. Without that support system, was the company struggling? I made a few careful calls to other former contacts. The pattern became clear. Victor was making promises he couldn't keep, burning bridges I'd spent years building. Over the next 2 months, I quietly gathered information, not for revenge, I told myself, but for understanding. What I found shocked me. The company had taken on 3 major projects simultaneously, something we'd always avoided because of resource limitations. 2 were already behind schedule. 1 had a client threatening legal action for breach of contract. Victor had secured these contracts with aggressive promises and rock-bottom pricing, undercutting competitors so severely that profit margins were razor-thin. One mistake would mean operating at a loss. But the real discovery came from an old friend in accounting. "Kevin, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but the company took out a substantial loan 6 months ago. Victor told the board it was for expansion, but I've seen the cash flow reports. It's covering operational costs." "How substantial?" $750,000, and we're burning through it fast." That night, I lay awake thinking about my mother. Did she know how precarious things were? Or was Victor hiding the truth from her too? I found the emails by accident. Amanda had left her laptop open, and a notification popped up. The subject line caught my eye. "Kevin's situation update. I knew I shouldn't look. I looked anyway. The email chain between Amanda and Victor went back months. He's not taking this seriously. Amanda had written, still thinks he can make it work with this consulting thing. Maybe you were right to push him out. Victor's response, give it time. He'll realize he needs us more than we need him. When he comes back, it'll be on our terms. Lower position, lower salary. He'll be grateful just to have stability. Amanda again, what about me? I can't keep living like this. The house is tiny, the car is embarrassing, and my friends won't stop asking questions. You have options, Victor wrote. You're young enough to start over. Don't let his failure drag you down. When the divorce happens, you'll be protected. I've already spoken to a lawyer friend about how to structure things in your favor. I read the entire thread, feeling my marriage dissolve with each message. They'd been planning my failure, discussing my life like I was a problem to be managed, not a person to be supported. I filed for separation the next week. No confrontation, no dramatic reveal. I simply handed Amanda the papers when I got home from work one evening. Her face went white. Kevin, what is this? I found the emails. All of them. She sat down heavily, the papers trembling in her hands. I can explain. You don't need to. It's pretty clear. You and Victor have been planning this for months. It wasn't like that. I was just venting, frustrated. You discussed divorce strategy with him. Amanda, you planned how to protect yourself from my failure before it even happened. Tears filled her eyes, but they looked more panicked than sad. You can't just end 15 years of marriage like this. You already did. You checked out months ago. I'm just making it official. Kevin, please. I was wrong. I should have believed in you, but you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know. She called Victor that night. I could hear her cry on the phone in the next room. Heard Victor's voice through the speaker telling her not to worry, that he'd help her find a good lawyer. It occurred to me that Victor had won exactly what he wanted, me isolated, alone and struggling. The separation became final within 2 months. Amanda moved back to Portland. I threw myself into work with a focus I'd never felt before. My small consulting practice began to grow. 1 client became 2. 2 became 5. I specialize in operational efficiency and risk management, the exact areas where I'd seen Victor's company struggling. I wasn't targeting them specifically. There was just a gap in the market for someone who understood both the big picture and the crucial details. A regional manufacturing company hired me to audit their processes. I found inefficiencies costing them $30,000 monthly. Within 3 months, they'd implemented my recommendations and cut those losses by 80%. They referred me to 2 other companies. Word spread. By month 6, I had more work than I could handle alone. I hired 2 junior consultants, both recent graduates hungry to prove themselves. I taught them everything I knew, treated them with the respect Victor had never shown me. Then the call came that changed everything. Mr. Bradford, this is Philip Chambers from Cascade Industries. We have a situation we'd like to discuss. Are you available for a meeting? Cascade Industries was a major player, the kind of client that could transform a small consulting firm into a serious business. I met Philip in downtown Portland at a restaurant far from my old neighborhood. We've been hearing impressive things about your work, Philip said, sliding a folder across the table. We're expanding operations in the Pacific Northwest and need someone who understands regional logistics, vendor relationships, and operational scaling. I appreciate the confidence, I replied. What's the timeline? Aggressive. We need preliminary recommendations within 6 weeks. Full implementation plan within 3 months. We spent 2 hours discussing their needs. As I left, Philip shook my hand firmly. One more thing. We interviewed several firms for this contract, including one run by a Victor Morrison. I kept my expression neutral. I see. He spoke very highly of himself, very poorly of his competition, made some unprofessional comments about a former employee who now works as a consultant, called the person unqualified and unreliable. My jaw tightened. That's unfortunate. We don't do business with people who tear others down instead of building themselves up. That's why he got the contract. After he left, I sat in my car, absorbing what had just happened. Victor had tried to sabotage me, and it had backfired spectacularly. 6 months later, news broke in the local business section. Morrison Family Enterprises had missed quarterly projections by 30%. The article was brief but damning, noting management challenges and operational inefficiencies. My phone rang that afternoon. "Tyler, did you see the article?" "I saw it. It's worse than they're reporting, Kevin. 2 major clients terminated contracts last month. The board is asking serious questions about Victor's leadership." "What does Mom say?" Tyler sighed. "She's defending him, but she's worried. The loan payments are straining cash flow. Victor keeps saying everything's under control, but the numbers don't lie." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because maybe you could help. Talk to Victor. Offer some advice. You know this business better than anyone." I almost laughed. "Tyler, Victor spent the last year telling anyone who'd listen that I'm incompetent. He tried to sabotage my consulting business. And you wanted to help him? He's family, Kevin. So am I. But that didn't stop him from trying to destroy me. After we hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I didn't want the company to fail. My mother's financial security was tied to it. But I wasn't going to beg Victor to let me help him either. The call came 3 weeks later. Victor's number flashed on my screen. I almost didn't answer. "Kevin." His voice was different. Quieter. No smugness. No condescension. Just tired. "Victor, I need some advice. Business advice." I waited, letting the silence stretch. "There's a client situation. Complex logistics, multi-state coordination. I thought maybe you could consult." "You tried to poison my reputation with Cascade Industries," I said calmly. "You told them I was unqualified and unreliable." Silence. Then, "How did you know?" "They told me, right before giving me the contract you wanted." More silence. I could hear him breathing. "Look, I may have made some mistakes." "May have?" "Fine. I made mistakes. But the company is struggling, Kevin. I'm not too proud to admit I need help. You spent a year trying to prove I was nothing without you. You manipulated my wife. You told my mother I abandoned the family. And now you want help. I'm asking for professional advice. I'll pay your consulting rate." "I'm booked solid for the next 4 months," I said, which was true. After that, maybe we could discuss terms. I hung up before he could respond, my hand surprisingly steady. 2 months later, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "Confidential consulting opportunity, Morrison Family Enterprises." But it wasn't from Victor. It was from 3 board members I'd never met. "Mr. Bradford, we're reaching out independently regarding a sensitive matter. Morrison Family Enterprises is facing significant operational challenges. We understand you previously worked with the company and are now a successful independent consultant. We'd like to discuss bringing you on as an external advisor to assess our current situation and recommend corrective measures. This would be a board-level consulting position, not requiring approval from operational management. Please contact us at your earliest convenience." I read the email 3 times. The board was going around Victor. Seeking help he was too stubborn to accept on his own. The irony was perfect. I called Philip at Cascade for advice. "Take it," he said without hesitation. "Document everything, keep it professional, and show them what you can do. The business world remembers who handles difficult situations with class." That evening, I drafted my response, measured professional and detailing my terms. Standard consulting rate, complete operational access, and authority to make recommendations directly to the board. 24 hours later, they accepted. Walking into Morrison Family Enterprises felt surreal. The building was the same, but everything else had changed. The receptionist was new. The lobby had been redecorated. Even the energy felt different. Stressed, anxious. The board had arranged for me to have my old office back, which felt like cosmic justice. When Victor found out I was in the building, he appeared within minutes. "What are you doing here?" His face was red, voice tight with anger. "The board hired me as an external consultant. I'm here to assess operations and provide recommendations." They can't do that without my approval. According to your corporate bylaws, they absolutely can. Board-level consulting agreements don't require operational management approval. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. This is my company, Kevin. Actually, it's a family company. Your name is on it, but you're not the sole owner or decision-maker. A board member, Patricia Wallace, appeared in the hallway. Victor, we need to talk. Kevin, your temporary office is ready whenever you need it. As I walked away, I felt Victor's glare burning into my back. He'd spent a year trying to erase me from this company. Now I was back, and he had to answer to me. The operational review took 3 weeks. What I found was worse than I'd expected. Projects were chronically understaffed. Budget overruns were standard, not exceptional. Client complaints had tripled in 18 months. Victor had taken on work the company couldn't handle, made promises it couldn't keep, and blamed everyone but himself when things went wrong. The financial situation was critical. The $750,000 loan was almost depleted, with 8 months of payments still owed. Cash reserves were dangerously low. 2 major clients were in arbitration over contract disputes. I documented everything. The failed projects, the cost overruns, the mismanagement. But I also found something else. Talented employees stuck in a dysfunctional system. Good people working impossibly long hours trying to compensate for poor leadership. My report to the board was 47 pages of detailed analysis. The conclusion was clear. Without immediate intervention, Morrison Family Enterprises would face bankruptcy within 18 months. Your recommendations? Patricia asked during the board presentation. I pulled up my recovery plan. First, we need to stabilize current projects. That means honest conversations with client about realistic timelines and potentially renegotiating terms. Second, we restructure operations around capability, not ambition. Take on work we can actually complete. Third, we address the leadership structure. Everyone looked at Victor. He sat rigid, arms crossed, face unreadable. I was working late at my temporary office when someone knocked. Amanda stood in the doorway. I hadn't seen her in 8 months. She looked different, more polished, like she was trying too hard. Kevin, I heard you were back. Temporarily, just consulting. She came in without invitation, sitting in the chair across from my desk. I've been hearing about your success. The consulting firm, the big clients. It's impressive. Thank you. I want to say I'm sorry. About everything. I should have believed in you. I studied her face, looking for sincerity. All I saw was calculation. Amanda, why are you really here? She looked down at her hands. Things haven't worked out the way I thought they would. The divorce, moving back, dating again. It's been hard. I'm sorry to hear that. I was thinking maybe we could talk. About us. About giving things another chance. There it was. She'd heard about my success and wanted back in. Amanda, you didn't just stop believing in me. You actively worked against me with Victor. You planned for my failure. I was scared. You were protecting yourself. I understand that. But we're different people now. You made your choice. She stood abruptly. So that's it? Years of marriage mean nothing. They meant everything. That's why it hurt so much when you gave up on us. She left without another word. I presented the recovery plan to the full board the following week. 23 pages of detailed strategy, covering everything from immediate crisis management to long-term operational restructuring. The plan requires significant changes. Some will be unpopular, but without these changes, the company won't survive. I walked them through each phase. Project triage, completing current commitments, even if it meant operating at a loss, to preserve reputation. Financial restructuring, negotiating with the bank to modify loan terms based on a realistic recovery timeline. Operational right-sizing, scaling back to sustainable capacity, which meant turning down new work until systems were stable. And finally, the hard part, leadership reorganization. The company needs operational management that understands both vision and execution. Someone who can balance ambition with capability. Victor finally spoke. And I suppose you're volunteering for that role? No, I'm recommending it. The board will decide. Patricia looked at the other board members. We need to vote on implementation. The plan is comprehensive, and frankly, it's our best option. But it does require removing current operational leadership from day-to-day management. My mother, who'd been silent throughout, finally spoke. Victor built this company. He did, I agreed, and he can remain involved in strategic vision. But the operational execution needs different leadership. The vote was scheduled for the following week. The boardroom was packed for the vote. Victor sat at one end of the table, flanked by two loyalists. My mother sat in the middle, looking torn. Patricia and the other independent board members sat near me. We're voting on the implementation of the recovery plan as presented. Patricia announced, this includes a recommended leadership restructuring. This is a coup, Victor said, his voice sharp. Kevin comes back for 3 weeks, and suddenly he's running the company? I'm not running anything. I replied calmly. I'm recommending changes based on operational analysis. The board decides what happens next. You want to take away everything I built? I want to save what you built. There's a difference. The vote was called. One by one, board members stated their position. The independent members voted yes. Victor's loyalists voted no. It came down to my mother. She looked at me, then at Victor, tears in her eyes. I vote yes, she whispered, for the good of the company. Victor stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. You're all going to regret this. He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. Patricia turned to me. Kevin, we'd like to offer you the position of Chief Operating Officer. Victor will retain his CEO title, but focus on strategic partnerships and vision, not day-to-day operations. I looked around the room at these people who just bet the company's future on my plan. I accept. The news went public within days. Morrison Family Enterprises announces leadership restructuring. Read the headline in the business section. The article was diplomatic, framing it as a natural evolution rather than a demotion. But everyone in the industry understood what had happened. Victor tried to control the narrative, giving an interview where he claimed the restructuring was his idea, that he'd always planned to focus more on strategy. Nobody believed him. Industry contacts reached out to me, some offering congratulations, others asking for the real story. I kept my responses professional and brief. The attention made Victor angrier. He stopped coming to the office, conducting whatever business he still controlled from home. When we did cross paths, he wouldn't make eye contact. My mother tried to mediate. Can't you two find a way to work together? I'm trying, Mom. But Victor sees this as a personal attack rather than a business necessity. He's humiliated. He's accountable. There's a difference. 3 weeks into my new role, I received a call from a trade publication. Mr. Bradford, we're writing a piece about generational transitions in family businesses. We'd love to quote you. I appreciate the interest, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. The reporter persisted. There are rumors that Victor Morrison made serious management errors that you're now correcting. Any comment? Victor built this company from nothing. That deserves respect. Now we're adapting to new market realities. That's all. When the article ran, that quote was the headline. Victor called me for the first time in weeks. Playing the gracious winner? Stating facts. I replied, your humility makes me look worse. That's not my intention. He hung up without responding. Thanksgiving was approaching, exactly 1 year after the dinner that started everything. My mother insisted on a family gathering, despite the obvious tension. We need to be together, she said. We're still family. Tyler picked me up that morning. This is going to be awkward. Probably. Victor's been telling everyone you orchestrated a takeover, that you manipulated the board. I know. And you're just going to sit there and take it? I looked at my brother. Tyler, I'm not going to offend myself at Thanksgiving dinner. I did what needed to be done. If Victor wants to see it as betrayal instead of business, that's his choice. The house felt different when we arrived. Smaller, somehow, or maybe I'd just gotten bigger. Victor was already there, sitting in his usual spot. He looked older, more tired. When I entered, he glanced up briefly, then returned his attention to his phone. Amanda was there too. Surprisingly, she'd apparently maintained her friendship with my mother, She avoided looking at me entirely. Mom served dinner with forced cheerfulness, chattering about meaningless things, the weather, neighborhood gossip, anything but the obvious tension in the room. Finally, Victor set down his fork. I have something to say. The room went silent. He looked directly at me for the first time. You got what you wanted. The company, the position, the glory. I hope you're satisfied. I met his gaze calmly. I wanted to save the company. That's what I did. You wanted revenge. No. Revenge would have been letting it fail and watching you lose everything. I chose to help instead. Victor's face reddened. You helped yourself to my position. Your position was destroying the company. The board's financial advisor projected bankruptcy within 18 months. Was I supposed to let that happen to prove I wasn't ambitious? My mother interrupted. Please, not today. Can't we just... No, Mom, I said gently but firmly. This needs to be addressed. Victor has spent a year telling anyone who'd listen that I'm incompetent and vindictive. I've stayed professional through all of it, but I'm not going to sit here and be accused of things that aren't true. I turned back to Victor. You want to know what really happened? You got complacent. You stopped listening to your team. You made promises you couldn't keep and blamed everyone else when projects failed. You try to grow too fast without building the foundation to support it. That's not. The board has the documentation. Client complaints, cost overruns, missed deadlines. I didn't create those problems. I'm just cleaning them up. Victor stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. In my own home, it's Mom's home. I corrected. And these are facts, not attacks. He grabbed his coat. I'm leaving. Anyone who wants to come with me is welcome. Nobody moved. Victor looked around the room, his expression shifting from anger to something like hurt. Fine. He left, the door closing quietly behind him. The silence that followed was heavy with discomfort. Tyler cleared his throat. Well, that went better than expected. The following Monday, I received an urgent message. Victor had called an investor meeting, inviting several key financial backers without board authorization. He's trying to turn them against you, Patricia warned. Claims you're making reckless changes, that the company was fine until you took over. What does he want? He's asking them to pressure the board to reverse the restructuring. I thought carefully about my response. When's the meeting? Thursday afternoon. I'll be there. Thursday came. The conference room was full of investors I'd never met, people Victor had brought into the company over the years. He stood at the head of the table, looking more confident than he had in weeks. Thank you all for coming. We need to discuss some concerning developments. He presented his version of events. A hostile takeover by someone with a personal grudge, reckless changes that threaten established relationships, a power grab disguised as corporate improvement. It was compelling if you didn't know the facts. When he finished, all eyes turned to me. I stood, pulling out my laptop and connecting it to projector. I appreciate Victor's passion. Now let me show you the data. For the next 20 minutes, I walked him through everything. The financial statements Victor had hidden, the client complaints he'd ignored, the project's hemorrhaging money, the loan payments threatening the company's survival. Here are the results since implementation of the recovery plan. I concluded, showing the latest financial reports. Client retention up 18%. Project completion rate improved by 40%. Cost overruns reduced by 65%. These aren't opinions. They're measurable outcomes. The investors asked hard questions. I answered each one honestly, including admitting where my strategies had fallen short of projections. When they voted, it wasn't even close. They supported the current leadership structure unanimously. One investor, an older man named Warren, pulled me aside after. Victor's a visionary, but visionaries need operators. He never understood that. You do. Victor left before the meeting officially ended. I found him in the parking lot, sitting in his car. I knocked on a window. He rolled it down slowly. Come to gloat? No. I came to ask if you're okay. He laughed bitterly. Am I okay? I just watched my company get taken away. It wasn't taken. It was saved. There's a difference. Not to me. I crouched down to his eye level. Victor, you called me a failure at Thanksgiving a year ago. You said I'd never succeed. You tried to destroy my marriage, my career, my reputation. And despite all that, I'm still trying to include you in this company's future. Why? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Because holding grudges is exhausting. And because you did build something worth saving, even if you couldn't maintain it alone. He stared straight ahead for a long moment. How did you do it? Really? I stood, brushing off my knees. I listened to people smarter than me. I worked harder than I had to. And I didn't quit, even when quitting seemed easier. He nodded slowly, then rolled up his window and drove away. 6 months later, Morrison Family Enterprises posted its first profitable quarter in 2 years. Victor still worked there, focusing on client relationships where his charisma served him well. We weren't friends, but we were professional. My mother thanked me privately for saving both the company and what remained of our family. Your father would be proud, she said. I'd like to think he would be, not because I won some battle, but because I'd proven that success isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about being good at what you do, treating people with dignity, and refusing to let other people's doubt define your limits. Victor had called me a failure. I'd walked back in with proof he couldn't deny. I'd succeeded not despite his doubt, but because of it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming the person they said you'd never be.